Not sure why I'm here.
How do you feel about...
It was a definite error on my part. You've kind of got, because there is a video of me going, poor. But at that point, he was in a mental hospital. He'd been sectioned. The left kind of eat themselves. That made me a far-right Nazi. I've had weekends where I've thought I'm cancelled.
And how's that felt?
Who wrote that? Oh, f***ing horrific. I mean, horrific. You get pushed. There became a point where you go, I hated the left more than I hated the right.
Where do we disagree? Islam.
Straight in.
53% of Muslims want homosexuality to be outlawed. Do you think if you did make a point about Islam, as Jonathan Pye, there might be complaints?
I mean, this one guy just went, just f***ing shoot them. Just f***ing shoot them. But I was like, when the horrendous attack in Israel happened, are you going to do a video about it? It was like, sorry, you want me to write some gags about this? Jonathan Pye hasn't said anything yet. Jonathan Pye hasn't condemned this. The thing with Jordan Peterson is
in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive.
Whereas with Tate, I can't see any value in any of it. Andrew Tate and his ilk are a fucking skid mark, aren't they? Would you have him on here?
Many of you have asked me, why do you ask people to subscribe? So let's look at the analytics. When I didn't remind viewers in the recent Peter Bleksley episode, the channel got 137 new subscribers. But when I asked you to subscribe before Raj and Mia's episode, 16,300 of you did. There's more where that came from because 46% of you subscribe, meaning 54% can hit the subscribe button. Now enjoy the show. Tom Walker, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great having you here.
Yeah, I was just saying, not sure why I'm here, right? I don't normally do these sorts of things anymore. I used to kind of do this quite a bit, but I followed you, and when I pressed follow, I thought, I wonder if I'll get a message off him going, do you want to be on the podcast? And what would I do if he did?
I didn't
and
expect
about 10 minutes later, there was this thing in my inbox. I was like, and you were so polite about it. I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it.
I didn't expect the dick pics. That was
what a dick pic. What a dick pic. Whoa.
Yeah, the ratio of size, it was really
like
something.
You say, I'm a small man, but you know.
Once I saw that, I said to my producer, you know, we've got to get this fellow of such girth.
We're going to need a bigger studio.
I'm excited to have you here. It feels different. I've watched you for years.
Yeah.
Years and years and years. Since I think probably even your first ever ones, it must have been back. I think I was at university, to make you feel old.
Well, it's 10 years this year.
Yeah, so
10 years, almost coming up to the day.
Okay, so no,
really?
I was 26, but I was watching it and loving it. And then there was a few years where a lot of maybe anti-woke people, for lack of a better word, sort of fell out of love with you. Did you feel that? And what led to that? Because I don't even know.
It was quite quick, really. You know, I started off and it was, I suppose it wasn't hugely sophisticated. You know, to me, it was always a character piece, always about what do reporters say when the camera's off. Mm-hmm. And the first couple I did happened to be political. The first one was about when Jeremy Corbyn became leader and the press went, how long do you think he's got? And he'd been in there 4 minutes. It was like, okay, his fate is sealed, right? Yeah. And as it turned out, he was massively unelectable. But you know, for a while there, I thought Corbyn could be a left-wing leader in charge of a left-wing party. Imagine such a crazy thing. And so very quickly, it sort of came a little bit of a, for want of a better word, it was more sophisticated than a Guardian mouthpiece, but it was very anti-Tories. It was pretty fucking easy to do. It was Cameron and Osborne, and it was austerity and all of that. And then Brexit came along. Trump was the one where the woke the left really turned on me, because the way I saw it, when Trump came in, I was genuinely shocked when he got in. I think most people, when people go, well, I knew he was going to get in, I think they're fucking lying, right? The
first time,
The second time round, I knew it from, I could see that coming, and I was amazed that still liberal people were going, no, but Kamala it's like, you're not trying to convince me she was a good candidate, right? Yeah. But Hillary was clearly a bad candidate by virtue of the fact Trump won, right? And I just thought, well, I've got 4 years to take the piss out of Trump. Let this video be, the left did it to ourselves. This is Hillary's fault. Blah, blah, blah. it's a more interesting satirical bent than going Orange Man bad, which I do a lot because
Sure.
I think the Orange Man is bad. But on a dime, it turned, and I was a Trump apologist. And with Brexit as well, I've never ever, I hope, never ever had a go at voters. Fucking Tory voters, fucking Leave voters. No, fucking Liz Truss, right? And Rishi Sunak and the Tory government and Farage and the people pushing for Brexit because I think they were selling snake oil, or at least appears to have ended up that way to a certain extent. I've yet to find many practical benefits.
Well, I was a Remainer.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I'd be now. I think it was too many years of I can't even think of it. I met someone, this was in Germany. I was living in Germany for a while. I was in a sort of flat share, and there was this woman I met, German woman, who asked me one day, because it's all anyone talked about, like mad how much. Yeah. And she said, hang on, how are they going to sort of move Britain away from Europe? And she thought it was she thought Brexit was physical. And that was the point when I said, right, no more. I'm never thinking about Brexit again.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that recently. I mean, I voted confidently to remain, but I understood the principle of regaining your sovereignty, taking back control, which is very nebulous, sort of,
sure,
a bit like Make America Great Again, but it's certainly better off in, or whatever. But from a pragmatic point of view, I think when particularly referendums generally only work or when you're voting for something, and there was nothing. Voting to leave wasn't voting for something. There wasn't an alternative. And I've spoken to. I hate this thing when they didn't know what they were voting for. I think the vast majority of people who I've spoken to who voted for Brexit knew exactly what they were voting for. It's just everyone I ask has a slightly different answer, which kind of tells you everything you need to know. It wasn't actually, Anyway, so I think me being fairly sensible and sort of walking the line with Brexit and kind of understanding why both sides might have a point, that made me a far-right, Nazi.
Right.
And thinking Trump is a terrible candidate, but understanding why people voted for him makes me a Trump apologist.
This is when I was loving you. I was like, Nazi, I'm in.
I mean, because I always thought, being left-wing, because I wasn't a politico before this all started, being left-wing, it's all about, helping out the working classes, freedom of speech and expression, these sort of liberal ideals. And actually, I learned pretty quickly that a lot of the audience that I'm speaking to are not old school lefties, the working man, but a lot of them are me, the Guardian reader, and so I very quickly realised that liberals and the left were far more interested in identity than they were in economics, and in my view, economic equality kind of sorts out everything else in its wake anyway. But when you're not talking to working people, and then also sort of call them thick for not voting the way you wanted to. So Pi or my work, certainly during that time, I was expressing that quite a lot, and a lot of lefties didn't like it. I find it weird. I mean, it's strange. The left kind of eat themselves, right? I've started to see it a bit with the right, to be honest.
Yeah.
But the left, weirdly, for about a decade there, the decade I've been doing it, useless at winning elections, but they'd kind of won the culture war. I think that pendulum is swinging pretty fast the other way. I think it feels like the right are beginning to win that culture war back. Yeah.
If I'm even the right, if the right left even means anything.
Yeah, it doesn't mean, it certainly doesn't mean much.
Because you and I probably agree on most, at least social issues, and I don't know much political economic stuff. I'm happy to sort of go, that's interesting on the left, that's interesting on the right. It's the social issues. You and I probably agree on most things. You started, Andrew Doyle was writing with you.
Yes.
Now he would describe himself as left-wing.
Yes.
And seems to agree with a lot of your points as well. So where was the differing that led to a sort of breakup? Yeah,
I mean, Andrew and I haven't spoken for several years, and I think, quite often writing partnerships don't end well. but it's safe to say we've taken different paths. I think for me, there was a decision that I had to make about whether I lean into being this politico, a pundit, someone who... It's very easy to speak out, right, when you've got nothing to lose. But the bigger that pie got, the more important it was to me to not lose it. And so there becomes a time when you start to ask yourself, like, is that really a hill I'm willing to die on? No, it isn't. Whereas I think Andrew was much more keen, and as he has done in his subsequent career, lean into that. Whereas I was much more interested in taking a step back from it and writing him as the character that he is, rather than... I could easily be a regular guest on Newsnight, I guess. I don't want to be. I don't want to be a pundit. I don't want to be a politico. I don't want to be, gobshite for hire. But for a while there, that's sort of where I was. There were times when I felt that pie was becoming controversial, and it wasn't sitting comfortable on my shoulders, I think. And I'm much happier where he is now, like doing this sitcom for BBC Radio. He's much more of a three-dimensional character rather than a deeply cutting satirical. And a lot of people would argue that I've lost my teeth, but I'm far happier in myself and in his suit than I think I've ever been.
That feels quite human and quite typical. I mean, Louis Theroux, for example, I mean, when in his 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s, it was really controversial stuff. Now, he did The Settlers recently, but otherwise it's not been stuff like that at all recently. And I know that I definitely feel, I'm 36, but maybe in a few years, I don't know. I love doing what I do, but sometimes it would be nice to be able to go out the house without thinking I'm going to get shouted at or,
absolutely. And sort of the older you get, the more mellow it is. But there is, I can't say enough that when I've had weekends where I've thought I'm cancelled because of a tweet that I've misjudged,
And how's that felt?
Fucking horrific. I mean, horrific. And I did an interview with Krishnan and Guru Murphy. This was quite early on, and I was talking about free speech and that I think it's a really important issue, but it's difficult to somehow because the left have sort of washed their hands of it because it's icky. The right have grabbed it and gone, well, we'll have that, please. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? It's they now, Anyway, I was talking about free speech, and I really clumsily gave a really clumsy example, which was essentially, if you think the colour of your skin makes you superior to a person with a different colour of skin, you should have the right to express that. Now, I could have chosen any other number of examples that would have made that point without it seeming like I wasn't deliberately trying to be controversial, but I got a huge amount of shit from it, from loads of particularly left-wing comedians, and it was relentless for a couple of days. I mean, this was many years ago, but you got to be so fucking careful. And in that instance, I got it. I totally got why they want to jump on it and go, look what he just said. And deliberately misunderstand what you've said, because I imagine you weren't saying, and I approve of those people who don't. Well, of course not. No, right. I mean, it is. You have to repeat it again and again and again. If you believe in free speech, you believe in the guy that you fundamentally disagree with. You believe in his right to say what he thinks. It's not. It surprised me how controversial an opinion that seemed to be within certain circles of people who would consider themselves liberal. Yeah. That's what this is all, a lot of this has been about. Someone like me, I felt like I moved away from the left because of that, and so many others have as well. Well, you get pushed away to a point where there became a point where you go, I hated the left more than I hated the right, because I can see why you're losing the argument here. And if you're not careful, you'll allow yourself to be pushed that way. I think Laurence Fox is a really interesting example, right? Laurence Fox, I can't remember, but I do remember watching the Question Time that he went on that sort of started this sort of, right? Oh, yeah. And I remember, I don't think I watched it live, but when it all kicked up, I was like, I do want to see what he's got to say. And I can't remember what it was, but I remember thinking, I don't agree with you, but it's not exactly a massively radical fucking far right position that you're posturing here. I think it was to do with immigration. I can't remember exactly.
It was, wasn't it? Was it? Yeah.
And he sort of doubled down on it for a bit and blah, blah, blah. And I think in that instance, you've got two choices, right? You can either go, I want an acting career. I've fucked up. Even though I agree with what I've said, it's going out of control. I'm going to keep my head down, keep my nose clean for 2 or 3 months and then start auditioning again. Or because you believe you're right and that you've been unfairly judged, you double down, you double down, you double down, to the point where, cut to 2 years later, you've bothered to go out and buy some pride flags and you're burning them in your back garden. And you're like, now, are you being a free speech warrior here or are you just being a wanker? Because I would argue you're just being a prick in that instance. Now, you might have a valid point to make, but you got fucking kids, mate. Do you know what I mean? What are you doing? Just I don't know. And I don't think this will get me in trouble. I don't think he's entirely to blame for having been pushed down that road. Because I remember a few months after his Question Time thing, I got a letter or an email from Equity, which is like obviously the acting union. And it's like, we're considering expelling Laurence Fox from Equity because blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm not part of this fucking union to judge how people vote and what their opinion is. I was absolutely appalled. And I think I said so publicly. And then cut to about 3 months later, I mean, that still gets sort of thrown out. You go, well, you supported Laurence Fox. I was like, I didn't support him. I just think it's preposterous that what the fuck has it got to do with Equity, what he thinks about Brexit or immigration or whatever. But the left are quite good at kicking you out. If you don't, you either agree with me 100% or you're a fucking Nazi, Whereas it's not that simple, is it?
Yeah, and because this is a podcast, I should mention evolutionary biology because people like to go into those things on podcasts. But
and men's mental health, don't forget that.
Men's mental health. Why don't you do that?
Tick that box, mate.
Yeah, Jeff Norcott probably does that. Does he?
We might be working on a podcast, hopefully coming out soon, but we've got to hit a mental health bit, because that's where the numbers are, right?
I like the men's, but I haven't gone into that. Maybe I will at some point, actually. But you can imagine a tribe doing really well, and then if you were the one that had these different views, well, the tribe would be better off if they kicked you out because they don't want some guy who could be ruining their plans to find shelter and food or whatever. Yeah. That guy who's out there is just going to cling to any other group that will take him. Yes. And that's what happened with Laurence and happens with many of us. And now we found there's a group that goes, oh yeah, you can say what you want. And although can you? Because I'm seen as sort of a pro-Israel, for example. I'm Jewish, or there's a bias there and all of those things. But then I've said a few times that I think kosher food should be banned. And suddenly I'm being screamed at the same way that I was by lefty people. So both sides have their purities.
I followed Konstantin and agree with some of what he has to say and disagree with a lot of what he has to say. But he, he pissed off his own recently. I can't remember what it was about, but I think it was, because he said something, he's like, no, hang on a minute, I'm not sure we're right about this. And then suddenly you're a fucking pariah.
Yeah, he talks about the woke right stuff, about there is a woke right.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's weird as that culture war pendulum has swung to the right, I think, then suddenly they're all behaving like us lefties, like, right, out.
Else.
Yes.
but those, I mean, that's just people, isn't it? That's just tribal people. And there was something actually Andrew said on my, because he came on Andrew Doyle, a couple of weeks ago, and he said something which seemed, right. And then I'd have to take it up with him in person, because when I was looking back over it, I thought, I don't know. Because he said the woke movement is unique, and I'm paraphrasing, that because it was an underdog disguised as or you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes. It was the establishment, but it's disguised itself as an underdog.
That's right.
But then I saw your Liz Truss interview, and she said that these people are now the establishment. The woke are the establishment. I was like, I don't think they are, love. You were the one in number 10. That's the establishment.
Well, her argument is that she wasn't able to actually do anything because the deep state or the civil servants or whatever, there's a sort of wokeness that.
I mean, I'd say she couldn't get anything done because she was fucking dreadful.
Well, I won't speak badly of my guests.
Of course.
Just as when someone talks of you in the future, I won't. And you can guarantee that. But you can say what you want. Go on.
All right. No, yes, she was fucking useless.
Oh, God. It's hard, though. I mean, you do call out these people, and I do as well.
Yeah.
Do that feeling you've had when you feel, oh God, they're all cancelling me. Do you feel bad about saying the things about these people?
No, like I say, not if you're a politician, you likely have thick skin anyway.
Have you ever had any reach out and sort of be like, look, Tom, come on?
No, any politician that I've met and any journalist that I've left, no matter what their stripes are, they've always really appreciated it. Even like, Tory MPs that have probably got a pasting from me. Not that I hang out with them much, but and I think journalists, even if it is a Daily Mail journalist, they go, I do. They empathise with the character, even if it's not his politics. Because also the thing is, Pye is clearly left wing. I would say me and Pye have the same voting record. But he is also a pastiche of a lefty. He can be a loony lefty as well. So I can sort of have my cake and eat it, because he is a ranting, raving, fuck the Tories kind of lefty. So I can sort of, like I say, have my cake and eat it and go, I can attack the right.
It's so complicated, that though. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Ricky Gervais, as I am of you, and he says the same thing. I'm on stage and it's a character, but if you've seen Ricky Gervais talk sort of off that, he happens to have many of the same views that he has as the comedian, as do you, and it's sort of like, is it sort of hiding behind that? It
is a difficult one, which is why more and more, like I say, I do this sort of thing less and less, because I would prefer the work to speak for itself, rather than there be this sort of blurring between that. But I noticed you had Katie Hopkins on recently. She's a card, but the problem with, say, her, for example, is she purports to be a comedian, but a lot of the time she's a commentator, really. But so sometimes she'll say something and she'll go, I'm just joking. You're like, but I don't know where that you're deliberately blurring that line so you can just get away with murder, and just say sometimes just stuff that you just go, it's sort of gross for the sake of it, not really that funny, or it doesn't have much value, I suppose. So I think Katie Hopkins is a weird one, because it's like, are you a comedian or aren't you? Because, and also just saying it's just a joke. As I've got a little bit older, I'm like, it's a bit lame ass, that sometimes.
That Dead Derek stuff was a bit horrific.
Yeah, like, it's funny, or it's not. What's the target? What target are you poking there with that Dead Derek?
I think she said it with the vaccines.
Right.
That was the target. But I think there are ways to do that without having a go at, the guy's died. It's just, and I said that to her.
Yes, you don't know. I thought... Yes, I thought you handled her quite well, if I may say so.
It wasn't easy. I was like bright red. By the end, I was sweating because I'm not used to it, and I'm still getting used to this whole role of being able to sort of...
Well, I suppose when you've been through whatever she's through, and I'm sure many people would argue deservedly so, but she must have such thick skin that she's just batting it off. But you were asking fairly...
gentle questions,
fairly straight questions, and she was picking you up on it, going, "Why are you asking me that?" And it's like, well, it's not like he's not trying to. This isn't a gotcha.
I just said, did that make you sad?
Yeah, she didn't like. She didn't like that.
I always ask that. I was going to ask you. Oh, I did ask you. Yeah, when you were sort of cancelled, did it make you sad? That's my go-to question. I didn't realise that's my question I asked. Did it make you sad?
Yes. I've experienced sadness in my life.
Gosh, what was the saddest moment? No, wait, what? I want to get to the sadness of you. Yeah, I tried with Konstantin as well. I was like, get me the emotion. What's going on? Where do we disagree? Islam.
Straight in.
Yeah, wow. Islam. I haven't even been recording for the first half an hour. We're starting now.
Yeah, right. Welcome to the show, Islam.
There's a character on your show called Jonathan Pye. Is that what it is?
On Call Jonathan Pye, yes.
Yeah.
So Sam, I thought that was... it was interesting. When I first recorded that, we recorded it and the three other characters were white. And then we went to the BBC. I was like, they're bound to want a non-white character in this. It is the way of the world. I'm not moaning about it. Let's use it to our advantage. It means that I can discuss things as a writer that I can't if there's 4 white people in there, right? So initially in my head, I wrote him as a black kid. And then when we were just auditioning, he auditioned and it was like, yeah, you're great for it. making him a Muslim, there you go. That's something. Well, he is Muslim, so you go, well, right for him, and that was really valuable because it meant that I could talk about things that I couldn't if his character wasn't in there.
There was a bit I saw, and you said, and bear in mind it's all scripted.
Yep.
You said, in this political climate, if I treat women like shit, I'm part of the patriarchy. If you treat a woman like shit to the Muslim person, who's, by the way, a great actor,
Yep.
he's very good, you're part of a rape gang. Now, and I suppose...
in context, that works, by the way.
it doesn't sound funny now. It was funny when you say...
Well, it's not even funny. It's a valuable point in the context of that particular conversation because he's being an asshole, because he's been captured by Andrew Tate, basically, this character, and he's being an asshole to all the women. It's like... The truth is that there are some people who would blame your religion on that, rather than who you're listening to on your podcast, and it is true. You go, I'm an asshole to a woman. You go, it's fucking patriarchy. He does it. It's part of his culture rather than him just being an asshole.
But there is a reason that Andrew Tate converted to Islam. An economic reason, I would imagine.
What to get them in? Yes, yeah.
So it does. Maybe there is something about the
quite
Muslim culture.
Possibly, yeah.
I guess that's the point. But that I think a lot of us feel, not necessarily you or Jonathan Pye, but a lot of the kind of the BBC or whatever are failing to realise, and many of us sort of feel there's we're in real trouble. We feel really sort of petrified by. Just as I would if there were maybe millions and millions of Scientologists now in the country, or Hasidic Jews, but scarier because Scientologists have never thrown a gay fellow off a building.
Yes.
Is that something of concern to you? And do you feel like it needs to be spoken about more? And are you thinking, I don't want to be concontroversial? I understand.
No. What I don't want to do is fudge an answer about something that I don't have. I can only really talk about, I lived in Whitechapel for up until about 3 years ago, which is a predominantly Muslim area. And I understood, like, if someone, a mate or, I don't know, my family member came to stay, how to them it would be a culture shock. Everyone's in hijabs and all of that. Mm-hmm. But it just didn't fucking bother me. I think I'm lucky, right? Because I do live in London and it's a multicultural experiment that works within its own terms. But you go 10 miles out of London and things suddenly become... The multiculturalism doesn't quite work so well, right? So I'm probably not the best person to ask because I'm like, hey, it's fine. We all just get along, But I think what I would say is that immigration, to me, if I'm voting in an election, immigration, way down the fucking list of things that I give a shit about. But I am aware it's the first or second on lots of people.
It's number one for me,
right? And unless that gets addressed, you ain't going to be voting Labour next time, right?
Yeah, whereas I used to look at both and go, oh, which one?
Yeah.
And now whichever one is going to shut the borders faster.
Yeah.
And if I heard someone say that 10 years ago, I'd have gone, what? You're mental.
Yeah.
But it's gotten to a point. I mean, it's something like 53% of Muslims want homosexuality to be outlawed. Yeah. 40% want Sharia law in this country. There's a significant number on the MI5 terrorist watch list. I mean, this is... I think that's what a lot of people watching want to communicate to you or BBC people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not BBC people, but yes.
Or someone who works with the BBC. You're an acceptable face at the BBC, which I don't think I would be.
Yes, that only recently has that sort of... Yes, have I had sort of the BBC stamp of approval, I guess. I mean, what I would say about that, this might be a nice pivot, but having worked with... Radio 4, it's the least censorious place I've ever worked, ever,
Which is good to hear.
I wouldn't be able... I don't think Audible would put my podcast on. I think there are too many issues. They just go, no, we won't have it. Whereas Radio 4 were like, you can just push this as far as you like. I was amazed. I'm not sure that that's correct in the BBC necessarily as an institution, but the comedy and drama and some factual on BBC Radio is possibly some of the best you will get and the least interfered with that I've certainly experienced.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
And very different, markedly different to a lot of the TV output, I think.
I think the TV at the BBC, I've not had a huge amount of contact with them because they won't fucking let me on. But I think that's a different kettle of fish, probably.
Do you think if you did make a point about Islam as Jonathan Pye, there might be complaints, there might be problems?
It depends how you do it, right? I mean, if it's me doing a 3-minute down the barrel outside Westminster thing, it's kind of difficult to touch sometimes really potentially incendiary subjects. When it's in the podcast, which is essentially a radio sitcom, really, that's easier because you can make Pye right or wrong, but if he's wrong, you've got someone in there to tell him he's wrong, and then you got the Muslim kid coming in and telling him why he's wrong, but then, so then there's a discussion about it, so you can explore it, and it is obviously a fiction. Sure. Whereas when I'm doing stuff down the camera, people don't know that it's a fiction. So I censor myself a lot more than I used to when I'm writing the stuff to camera, because I realise that have I covered all bases? Because otherwise all I get is millions of people go, yeah, but you didn't say that. So it's sort of just an exercise of making sure the argument is tight enough. Yeah.
Imagine if you could put it out there and never look at the comments or Twitter or anything.
These days, that is how I live my life. I mean, I try and stay away from Twitter as much as possible. Yeah, I rarely read the comments anymore because, well, to start with, it was great, and then now it's just
what a handsome man. He's very. Oh, I wonder if he's single.
It's like the online thing. You can have 20,000 thumbs up and 100 thumbs down, and you look at that and you go, "Why the 100 thumbs down?" It's like if you're performing live and it can be a full house and everyone's loving it, but there's some asshole on the third row like that. It's all you can see all night. It's just the one person who's not enjoying it. And I think online is a bit like that. So just stay away from it. And you realise it's not the real world, is it? What goes on online. It's sort of a reflection of the world's opinions, but it's not really what people think. I don't think people behave the same as they do in real life. This really weird thing happened when the horrendous attack in Israel happened, and when something horrible happens, sometimes I get, "Are you going to do a video about it?" It was like, "Sorry, you want me to write some gags about this?" Like, really? Okay.
But Andrew Lawrence might have.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he'll be straight in there selling tickets. But I think it was a matter of hours. It might be a day, but it was a matter of hours that I was getting all this shit, and I couldn't work out what it was. And it was people going, "Jonathan Pye hasn't said anything yet. Jonathan Pye hasn't condemned this. Jonathan Pye, Gary Lineker, they haven't said anything about you bastards. You must be an anti-Semite or whatever." But it was huge, and I was like, "All right, maybe I should have made a comment or not, or condemned the violence or not." But what sort of person sees that on the telly and goes, "I'm going to go fishing and see who hasn't said anything, and I'm going to publish." And you go, now that's the behaviour of an asshole, right? Yeah. And they live their life trying to win that argument.
Well, some people, just because I know a lot of Jewish, there are those people, 100%. I know Jewish people like that, or Zionist people like that. And, as you know, there's good and bad people in all kinds of places. A lot of Jews are just like shit scared right now. There's like 250,000 Jews in the country. We import more people who we know hate Jews every year than we already have Jews in the country.
Yeah.
Full stop. And that's Pew Research. 97 to 99% of people in most countries in the Middle East have unfavourable views of Jews. This was pre the whole Gaza thing. Yeah, and people can say, "Oh, Israel," or that, but there's also a lot of Mein Kampf and stuff like that out in the Middle East, a lot of that stuff going on. So we're looking around going, shit, and if it was going to happen again, let's say, how would it happen today? Well, it's not going to be the far right, because we've seen that. That's yesterday's war. So we're looking and we're seeing this growing Islamism that we're perceiving as that. And we're seeing what happened in other countries, Iran and Afghanistan, where the left or parts of the left aligned themselves with Islam to get in and made them into Islamist countries. They had previously been these modern, not utopias, because they had...
Yeah, yes.
So we look around at that, and I don't think you're an example. I haven't heard anybody say, "Oh, I'm not Jonathan Pye at all." But Gary Lineker, I think we all knew that as soon as Israel retaliated, he would be on the tweeting, saying this is the worst thing I've ever seen. So he was just tweeting about Spurs that day that October 7th happened.
Yeah.
So there is, I suppose you can call it whataboutery, or you can say, well, hang on, why is he only focusing on this one when it's Israel doing it? You know, right now, Sudan, Congo.
Yeah.
So that's the concern. So you're absolutely right. Some people are just like, I'm going to get Jonathan Pye now. I'm going to get Tom. And then some people are going like, how do we make people realize that we're on our own here? So,
yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's the one I was just Start telling Gary that. Do you know him, Lineker?
I have. I met him. He did come to see my show, and so I have met him, and he was very nice. I felt that there was that strange bit when, a couple of years back before he got fired in the end, but when he had tweeted, some of this rhetoric is reminiscent of 1930s Germany. I really didn't have a problem with that tweet. I thought that he worded it fairly...
was that the rat one, though?
No. This was about, maybe 2 years ago, and I think it was Suella Braverman being a cunt about something. Yeah. And
I like her.
I'm sure you do. No, there was some of the rhetoric coming out of her mouth. I was just like, ooh, love, you're a minister, just deliberately incendiary. And I didn't think he was particularly inaccurate when he said some of this language is reminiscent of. You could argue that as a BBC man, he shouldn't be allowed to do that. I think there is, I take your point about what you've just said about him, but, that there are certain things that are a matter of public debate that perhaps if you work for the BBC, you shouldn't engage in. I think there does become a point where what's happening in Gaza, you look at that and you go, no matter how we got to this point, what is happening there is horrific.
Yeah.
Is that a matter for debate? Because
isn't it a matter of debate who's to blame? The matter, it's not up for debate like what's happened. Terrible, awful. And I know so many Jewish people, they sit and they go, oh God, what's happened now? This is terrible. Partly probably because they feel sorry for the Palestinian people dying, partly because they're thinking, God, we're going to get shit for this. I know they shouldn't, that might be a selfish instinct.
No, but it's a reasonable instinct.
That's a human instinct. They don't want that happening. The Jews, the very few Jews in this country are sitting there going, shit, please just stop. At the same time, they're going, well, Hamas can surrender. They can just surrender, and they can. So why isn't there this huge global push? Hamas, surrender, give up. Their founding charter, they were voted in. Their founding charter was kill Jews. It wasn't Zionists. It wasn't Israelis. That was in the founding charter. So we're going, why isn't Lineker raising awareness about this? Why isn't he saying give the hostages back? Can you imagine a family member of yours been there for a year and a half?
Yeah.
So I get all those points, but people would say to Gary, some of your stuff is 1930s Germany, and I guess that's in the eye of it's not a subjective thing, isn't it?
Yes. Nazism is in the eye of the beholder.
I think it is, though. I know that. I know that's fine. But I imagine Hitler thought he was doing good. I think so. You think he was sitting there going, "Wah ha ha ha"?
Yeah. Well, there's a bit. I don't know.
Complicated.
This
is what I forgot to finish my point about Andrew Doyle, because he said this woke is unique because it's sort of the underdog being in charge.
Yes.
I think that's every authoritarian regime. That is the Bolsheviks, that's the Stasi, and that's the Nazis. The Nazis were the victims because the Jews were stealing all of their money and all of those things. So everybody feels like they're a victim, including Gary Lineker.
Or you use that, I think, you use that to your political aim.
But I bet they felt it as well.
Yes.
We can't know.
Yeah, I guess so. I just think there's a lot of problems in the country, and there's a huge amount of inequality, and I think sometimes someone like Farage, for example, can just go and just stop the boats, which I totally, anyone that goes, well, I don't think we should stop the boats. I'm sorry, I think you're insane. Of course we have to stop the boats, right? Because those are our borders and that's illegal immigration, but you can't just, I went to a wedding recently, sorry, I'm going all over the place. I went to a wedding recently and all anyone spoke to me about was immigration. But this one guy just went, just fucking shoot them. Just fucking shoot them. But I was like, but he meant it. And you go, now where are you getting that from? Where has your humanity gone? And I don't think he was. I don't think that's a rare thing for people to come out and say now. I'll just fucking kill it. This is what he said.
I've never heard that.
Shoot them. You wouldn't get another boat, would you? But I saw an interview with someone the other day I think it was on LBC, someone calling in, but going, if they fucking drown, they drown. It's like, now there is...
That's mental. But I've never heard anyone, though. So that's it. It's just a difference in who we think, or how prevalent we think those views are.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Whereas I think the concern many on sort of my side of this debate have is that it's actually, on the other side, it's a mainstream view. Say Dawn French, for example.
Yeah.
Did you see her thing? Oh no, they did a thing to you about October 7th.
Yeah.
That's actually quite mainstream and prevalent, I think, more so than a bunch of lunatics saying, just kill them in the channel, like that, which is horrific, you know? So that's why I'm more concerned about that kind of mainstream elitist celebrity. I know those are the sort of the key words that lunatics sound like, you know, but that is what I'm concerned about, because it is, that is a view you can express. Obviously, she got absolutely hammered for it because it was
and rightly so, and she apologised for it, and rightly so, and, you know... I mean, it would be awful if Dawn French got cancelled, though. It's Dawn fucking French, man.
I know. Look, but if anyone like apologised and it seems sincere, let's move on.
Well, I wish that was enough sometimes, you know, that a really honest, I genuinely, I mean, like with the Gary Lineker thing that he eventually got done for, do we honestly think that he is an anti-Semite, whether consciously or unconsciously, and has just hidden it for 25 years, been decided 3 weeks before the end of his contract to go, do you know what? I'm going to put a rat up and point to it and go, Jew. Because of course not, right? So it was definitely an accident. He definitely didn't mean to cause offence. And he, I mean, I saw a little video just going, I am so fucking sorry. Well, he didn't say fuck, obviously. It's Gary Lineker.
God forbid he said that.
Yeah, I mean, that was, gone.
But doesn't it point to, not maliciousness from Gary Lineker, but doesn't it point to the fact that it's possible he didn't even spot it at all. But maybe he saw it and wasn't aware that was the kind of propaganda that Goebbels was engaging in which case maybe Gary, who seemed probably a nice guy, quite bright as well, and a very good footballer, maybe this is a reason footballers shouldn't really be, you know, wading into such complex debates. If he doesn't even know that. True, but then you get to the point where you go, well, we can only experts can talk about this. Yeah.
And actually, that's what public discourse is. Let's imagine let's imagine weird phrase. Let's imagine there wasn't an anti-Semitic rat on the post he put out, because you know that could happen.
Sure.
But you know, why not have a? I mean, I was thinking today, when I first started, Facebook was a cesspool and Twitter was, I mean, you had to have sort of, you know, sharp shoulders and, but you could have an argument on Twitter and I could be persuaded by their argument and you go, we agreed to disagree here, but hey, we found a point where we agree on that and let's all move on. I mean, that just doesn't fucking happen anymore. But some public discourse, and for me to have an opinion and go based on this, and for you to turn around and go, well, actually, you're completely ignorant. Here's a fact.
Yeah.
And for me to go, oh, right, I'm sorry about that or whatever. So I'm not sure you should only have experts on, you know, I don't know, the history of Israel that can express an opinion about it.
Of course.
You know?
So what if it's more, Gary can talk about this? Of course he can. I don't want to say he can't talk about it, but here's why his opinion is going to be really simplistic.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, he presents Match of the Day, so I wouldn't go to him for my international news, you know, or you know. But I guess some people would. But in the same way that some people would go to, you know, Andrew Tate for life advice, you know. So.
What did you think about? I mean, because he's just. I think both sides of all of this can all go, this guy he's not probably a very good person. I added probably there because I suddenly had an image of 7 people in the comments going, you bastard, I love Andrew Tate, you don't know what he's done. But he seems horrible.
But also it's worth them coming. You want to know who's watching, right? I mean, it is interesting that Russell Brand occasionally retweets him going, he's got some interesting stuff to say though. It was like, just shut up and wait for your rape trial, mate. I mean, Andrew Tate and his ilk are a fucking skid mark, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Would you have him on here?
Well, firstly,
We'll be back after this.
Firstly, I'd need security.
Yeah.
Because I don't know this. He seems like a kind of guy who might hit me, and I can't be hit. I don't think I'm.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not a very good punchy.
If I were hit, I don't even know what I'd do, and I'd get mouth ulcers. I get quite bad sort of canker sore mouth ulcer things. And
but you wouldn't from a moral point of view object to having him, because as we discussed just before I came on, that there is an issue sometimes, I think, with podcasts that your podcasts are generally there to give someone an airing. Let them air their views, and they can either give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves. But I do worry sometimes that podcasts seem to be a replacement for robust journalism, and that people come to, and this is not because
I'm the exception.
Yeah, of course. What you do is genius, but there is sometimes a lack of accountability for I mean, it was absolutely fair enough for you to get Liz Truss to sit here and just talk shit, but which, I mean, she did talk a lot of shit, but she can get away with it if she's not being challenged. And I think there's always a place for something like this. But if Andrew Tate came here and sat on
that's
here,
different.
It would be...
That's very different.
I wonder whether you are under a moral obligation to actually go, mate, you come across like a really nasty bastard, and I can't see any value in what you do apart from the money you make.
Yes.
Or would you, if he was sat here... Oh, we're just daydreaming here now. But if he was imagine I'm him,
yes.
Right? But do you think you'd be able to give him a hard time, or would you?
I would be nervous for weeks before.
Yeah.
And I would say to myself, you've got to be strong. I'd be repeating that in my sleep. You've got to be strong. You've got to be strong. Because I find it very hard. Even with very nice people, I've got to sometimes say things. I do find it hard. I think that's why people like this show, I think. And there's also, there's a beauty to it as well. I mean, Liz Truss, whenever you've seen her, she's defending herself and being like, she's got Paxman on her and she's all that. And people want to know, well, who was this woman?
It's the most human I've ever seen her, actually.
That was
be
not
honest.
easy.
No. But there was a moment where you implied that she was charismatic. I was like, oh, fuck off, mate.
But charismatic can mean eccentric.
I understand.
What was it? That thing she said years ago, was it about cheese or milk or something? Do you remember that went viral?
Yeah.
We will
pork markets. There's something about pork markets.
She's great. But she was great.
She's great.
But you know what?
Never heard Liz Truss described.
You know what was great? And also not just from a personal point of view, but a journalistic point of view, was finding out what was the last thing the Queen said to a reigning prime minister.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there. So I can have all the stuff that's having a go at her has been done. The reviews of her book, all that stuff has been done. Why do I need to? And I feel bad. This woman sat in front of me. Everyone's had a go at her non-stop, and now I'm going to have a go as well.
Yeah,
So that Andrew Tate, that's a very different kind of thing. And I would have to go in hard. But also, I think people like to tune in and go, okay, but where's the human in this person? That's why I asked Katie Hopkins, do you get sad? I'm thinking, is she a psychopath? I really want to know. But you have the issue.
Her answer to that was pretty much a psychopath. But
well, she was just annoyed at me, I think. But Tate, I think the issue isn't the stuff he says about women and men and whatever, which I find...
Although that is an issue, right?
No, but that's an issue I would challenge.
Yes, yeah.
The issue about having him on here would be the sex allegations, and I have to say allegations because I don't know how much, I haven't looked into it enough. That stuff is fucking mad. And just as there is a problem on the left, we've said about people protecting their own and the purity spirals, on the right the same thing happens. A lot of people watching this will be annoyed at me for saying he's a bastard, Andrew Tate. But I mean, Russell Brand, But
isn't it strange that these guys are, like you say, these are allegations, but let's be honest, when Russell Brand was alleged, when those allegations came out, it wasn't like, fucking hell, didn't see that coming.
What a shock.
But the fact that they stick with each other, and on the day of Russell Brand's hearing recently, he sort of coming out talking about, global conspiracies, and it's all a conspiracy, and the establishment, they don't like it when, it's like, no, mate, I think you're a nasty bastard to women. And I work in the comedy industry, so anecdotally, he's clearly been an asshole to many, many people. That's not a global conspiracy. That's you being and allegedly, possibly a rapist. Why are you defending someone like Andrew Tate? That again, it's no shock that he has been accused of being a sex trafficker and like sex trafficking young kids. That, you know, everyone kind of goes, the people that follow Andrew Tate, like, he is so cool. He's like really cool. It's like, he's technically a sex trafficking pedophile, allegedly, right? you know what I mean? It's like, if you're bringing in 14, that makes you a pedophile. Andrew Tate. There's nothing cool
don't say
about
that makes
it.
you a pedophile, Andrew, because that's going to be clipped. You know how this business works. You said to someone before, when I go on, I'm going to do that and it'll be clipped. Yes. Now, the issue, okay, Andrew Tate, and everything I've ever heard him say is horrific. Yeah. Horrific. Yeah. There's a problem, though, and I'm going to blame we blamed my side for not having a go enough at a lot of people like that, and potentially Russell Brand as well. We don't know the whole truth of it, but we're way too quick to jump to the defense of people on our side. On that sort of mainstreamy side, there's been a lot of discussion, boys don't have good male role models and all those things. Look at Andrew Tate. Everyone's gone to Andrew Tate. But is that not partly because when Jordan Peterson came along, who, as far as I'm concerned, is chalk and cheese, Andrew Tate and Jordan. It doesn't mean I agree with everything he says, particularly about religion and some of that kind of stuff. I don't even know what he's, but about boys and men. And I think now the consensus does seem to be, this is a guy who was helping boys and men to understand that women don't owe them anything and that kind of thing. He was vilified. Yeah. And so all that's left is Andrew Tate.
Yeah, I think, well, the sort of the dichotomy, for want of a better word, or the thing with Jordan Peterson is he does, there is stuff of value. Yeah. That he says, whereas with Tate, that I can't see any value in any of it. But with Jordan Peterson, particularly when it comes to young men, there is quite a lot of value to it. But then again, you look at someone like Jordan Peterson, you go, right, he has some stuff of value to say, some stuff that's batshit crazy. Hey, that's what being a human is, right? Sure. But then when he gets Tommy Robinson on, you go, well, that's a tacit endorsement, particularly if you're not going to challenge him. So smart people go to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson goes, I curate who I have on at my podcast. Look at this guy. I don't necessarily agree with him, but let's hear what he has to say. To me, that's a tacit endorsement. And I don't think Tommy Robinson has a huge amount of value. I think he's leapt on to certain things that clearly are concerns for you. Yeah. But I don't think those concerns are genuine. He's hijacking it for his own ends, as far as I can see.
Well, there's the thing with Tommy. I think a lot of people don't know enough about him. I would say he's certainly not an Andrew Tate, particularly because Tate is now a Muslim and Tommy's that's his thing. I think hell will freeze over. But they grew up together in Luton.
Oh, right,
so they knew one another.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they were all chummy with Stacey Dooley, which is funny to think of.
Wow.
Yeah, no one thinks about that.
Why didn't she do a doc about them? She could. Yeah.
Well, she did a doc about Islam.
Did she?
Stacey Dooley. Right. And this was 15 years ago. And she went hard on Islam in a way that all of a sudden is impossible to do. Right. And you wouldn't see Dancing on Ice, lovely Stacey talking about at all now. Yeah. But she grew up in the same environment as Tommy and apparently had much of the same views, but presented them maybe in a different way. Yeah. But Tommy, from what his sort of supervillain origin story was that his cousin was taken by a grooming gang, and you can imagine the rest. And there was one mosque in Luton when he was growing up. Mm-hmm. By the time now, there's 20 or 30 of them. And Luton, I mean, that's where Stacey Dooley did her BBC documentary. Yeah. All of a sudden, you can't say all the things that Stacey was saying back then. Mm-hmm. And Tommy is the worst person ever. So I do think he's been dealt a rough card. Now, is he rough around the edges? Yeah, I mean, he got done. One of the times I think was beating up a Nazi or getting in a fight with a Nazi because he is not one. Yes, yeah. So these are the things I think most of the mainstream media don't really know about Tommy Robinson.
Well, I think the problem is like you just say there that he might have, when the left and the establishment do ignore concerns that are genuine concerns because it's a bit uncomfortable, then you get people like Tommy Robinson sort of going, well, I can be the spokesperson for that, and I don't think that does.
But what are your issues with his message? What are the things?
I think he's a thug, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, maybe he is a bit thuggy, but that's sort of he grew up.
But also
around
the idea that he's in prison, right? I think he's out right now.
Yeah, he's out now.
But I don't think he was. Welcome to the show. a few people kind of going, "Oh, he's a political prisoner." It's like, no, he's not. No, he's not. He got done for contempt of court. But and he comes out with his beard like he's been in fucking Guantanamo Bay. It's like,
it wasn't solitary though. And his point would be here.
Yeah.
He's been talking for years and years about something that people used to be on board with, suddenly then couldn't say, and now people are on board with again on a certain side. And he sees himself as a centrist. I don't think he's got far right views, or I don't know. But the reason he was in solitary wasn't because of anything he had done. It was because the jails are overwhelmingly now Muslim. We have so many Muslim criminals in our jails. So it's sort of him being proven right 20 years later and having to be in solitary because of the problem he warned us about.
Yeah. I just, I wish there was a, like, even if I disagree with, even if immigration is way down my list of things, I just wish there were some sensible people waving that flag, and so that I could disagree with them, but you go, you're not a fucking nutter. Whereas
But some
Tommy Robinson might be right about some things, but I don't think he's the right person to listen to.
So some would say, and this is a tricky one as well, because some would say, oh, that's sort of an elitist view, like, because he's working class. But then I don't mean to suggest...
It's got nothing to do with him being working class.
But all working class people are like...
Exactly.
So I get that that's a flawed thing, but also you see the point as well, that he doesn't speak how Douglas Murray speaks.
No. Yeah, no, I take your point, but that doesn't mean he's not a thug.
But I wonder, and I think it's one of those things, isn't it? And it doesn't mean that you're wrong if you don't have an example to mind, but are there things that he's done that you thought, gosh, I so disagree with what he's said or done?
No, because I haven't really followed him hugely.
I think you'd be surprised if you had and the reason I say that is because when I had him on, I was scared out of my mind for weeks. Again, how am I going to push back? And I did a lot of research of, I'm going to agree with a lot of things, but I'm going to push back on some things. And it was very hard to find anything bad. There was one or two videos of him being a little bit, leery on camera and things like that. There are fights. There's mortgage fraud. There's going to America with his mate's pup, which is mental, by the way. He wasn't allowed in America because of drugs and things like that. So he's got a mate that people used to say, oh, you look a bit like him. So he just used his passport, got through British whatever, got into America. They told him, like, wait here a minute. And he just legged it, got out the airport, just went around America for a few weeks, and apparently didn't get arrested till he got back to the UK. That's when I said to him, are you a psychopath, Tommy? I don't think he liked that. But I think
probably not.
That kind of risk taking.
But for someone who is so anti-illegal immigration, for him to go and illegally
That's a very good point. I don't know. I think, Tommy, this is the thing. We all have these different people we look up to, or we go like, I think he might be right and he might be wrong. I think most of us can agree on Andrew Tate, though, and all of that. How do you feel about, I say we sort of jumped to defend Russell Brand or whoever else. How do you feel about sort of the Huw Edwards? You jumped to defend him.
I did. I mean, no one's perfect, but it was a definite error on my part. But I mean, I get a lot of shit for it. So when the allegations first broke about, do you remember when it broke for 3 days? No one knew who it was in theory, although a picture of Huw Edwards' arse was doing the rounds.
Yes.
So it's like we all know who it is.
Oh God!
And also, I mean, but what you just did there, oh God, that was my instinct. Yeah. Oh, you poor bastard. It's like my dad hasn't worked out how to use his phone, and it's just, you know what I mean? He just doesn't really know how it works. Yeah. But I found let's just for a moment live in a world where Huw Edwards did nothing illegal, right? So let's imagine what we knew at the time. And what became fairly clear was Huw Edwards likes to go on Grindr, likes to have people round and have sex with them, probably younger than him, which is sort of fairly normal in the gay world, right? Whereas weirdly, if he'd have been doing that with 19-year-old girls, you'd go, now that is far more of potentially an abuse of power than some twinks on Grindr going, I'm looking for a big fat daddy this evening, right? Because that's sort of part of that
Do you remember that Milo talking about that? Milo?
Yeah.
That was his cancel. That was at the end of it.
Really?
But he's come back. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, what the fuck happened to him? He was back everywhere and then just gone.
He's back all over Twitter, and he's now straight.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah, it's bonkers. Yeah. It's bonkers.
Anyway, as far as I was concerned, it was fairly clear that Huw Edwards had done nothing. To me, it was clear that he'd done nothing illegal. Morally, you could argue that that's not a very nice way to treat your wife. But
it's not about business.
But yeah, it's none of anybody's business what people get up to behind closed doors, as long as it is consensual and legal, etc. It didn't age well, shall we say? In a month or two later, or it might have even been 3 or 4 months later, it became really clear that he had been. Not only did he have some really horrible pictures on his phone, but I think it became clear that there was a behaviour of an
bullying.
Abusive behaviour that had, and weirdly writing the thing for the BBC, chatting to a lot of people in the BBC, and a lot of people at the BBC were just like it's. They felt ashamed, really. I mean, he obviously it's not a victimless crime, but he let a huge amount of people down. But basically, I now get pedo apologist all the time on Twitter, and there is something this time round where you go, you've kind of got me, because there is a video of me going, poor Huw Edwards, what you get up to.
Yeah, you weren't going, poor Huw Edwards, because of what you did with those kids, and I agree with that.
Yes, exactly.
You were saying, I doubt he did it.
It wasn't it wasn't even that. By that point, there was no, the police had said, we've had a look, there is absolutely no reason to believe he's done anything wrong. And at the time I did this video, at that point, he was in a mental hospital. He'd been sectioned and there was no real suggestion at the time that he'd done anything wrong. But what I suppose I did do is I put my head above the parapet before all the facts were in. And I kind of regret that, but I'm not a pedo apologist, because the idea that I would have found out what he did and then go, actually, I think what you get up to behind closed doors, even if it is with kids, that's not what I was doing. But again, I think that was one of those things. Had that happened slightly earlier in my pie career, it would have been, oh my God, tearing my hair out. That's me gone. I'm cancelled. It's over. And actually just let's ride the storm for a couple of days. And also in this case, just put my hands up and go, yeah, I totally fucking, like I say, I spoke before all the facts were in. But the point still stands that if he hadn't have committed a crime, what you get up to behind closed doors is no one's business. And who you choose to sleep with is nobody's fucking business. There's this really weird thing because I trained to be an actor and I kind of wanted to be an actor, but this sort of authenticity argument about how a gay person can't be played by a straight person, which to me seems like a complete misunderstanding what acting is.
That's mad. This is what I mean when I say that you don't seem to be on that woke side at all, and you seem to be on side with a lot of the guests on this. Most of them are gay anyway. They're all gay.
Yeah.
I know it's all my guests are gay. Like 90% of them.
Well, you're an attractive bloke, Andrew.
Well, that's what it is. I can't get straight people on. Not straight men anyway. But yeah, go on, sorry.
What the fuck was I talking about?
Nonsense.
Yeah, absolute bollocks. But it was something to do with authenticity.
Gay people acting as not gay and authenticity.
How did we get to that?
I jumped in there.
No, totally. I might remember it.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Message me later.
Yeah, all right, fine.
Yeah. I think I was saying that people think, this is where people say that, I don't think you're very different to, Andrew Doyle or a lot of the people on this show. I mean.
I don't know. I imagine my voting record is different to a lot of the people you've had on here.
No one cares about that anymore.
No. But that's what I find interesting when I get attacked by the left, and it's sort of one of my little things. You do realise that we vote exactly the same fucking way.
They don't care.
They don't care, do they?
They care that you might not say trans women are literally biologically women.
Yeah, they would care.
Yeah. And that's the.
Are you trying to get me to say that?
What do you think?
I found it was interesting in the second series of the podcast. Finally, I was like, I think I'm going to do one about the gender debate, but let's sort of again have my cake and eat it. And you go, let's just. I mean, I can adapt the pie character kind of which way I want to go. And you go, let's not make him a reactionary asshole. Let's not make him. And I'm not saying, let's not make him J.K. Rowling, right? Let's just have him as a 50-year-old man. Exactly the conversation I had around my kitchen table when my stepmother went, I don't get the they-them thing. Right, so to try and explain that, so that's sort of the route I kind of went with it, and are
you looking at the madness of it without having to side?
I'm looking at the madness of the debate rather than the debate itself. So the idea of pie asking questions, and there is always an assumption where he's asking these questions in bad faith, and he's not. He's genuinely, I don't understand this, that, or the other. Well, you're a bigot then. You go, or at one point, they're in diversity training. She's like, well, you need to educate yourself. He's like, how can I educate myself if every time I ask a question, I'm called a fucking bigot? And I think that is quite often the case. But what's weird is I thought this would be quite a controversial episode. I was a bit worried about it. And then about 2 weeks before the episode came out, there was the High Court ruling, which sort of has taken some of the heat out of that debate, really. I think there has been some clarification there, and I'm sure there are many millions of people who do not welcome that result. Then there are many millions that do, but there does seem to be a slight shift in the way that debate. People aren't scared to go, God, okay, because I did want some clarification because I find it confusing. Yeah. What I would say is I thought J.K. Rowling's reaction to that ruling, she could have been a bit classier, right? I understand why you want to go on and it's me with a glass of champagne and tea. You go, well, actually what you could have done is almost say exactly what I just said. I know there are millions of people who are disappointed in this, but I welcome the result. But hey, we're all fucking friends and blah, blah, blah. And you go, you could have, it just felt a little bit bitchy, but hey, maybe she's earned the right, don't know.
Well, I think again, a lot of where we talk, where I don't necessarily agree or don't. It's often because we've been in different circles, haven't we? And we're sort of, there's loads about perhaps your world where I'm a bit, and vice versa. And I think with J.K. Rowling, many of us have watched that kind of thing, and she's lost. You think about when you and I have had little bits and pieces of, the amount she's had has been insane. Yeah. And she had to deal with it first time round with the right. Having a bit of the religious right or witches and all of that stuff.
Yes.
That's how she started. So it's like this long struggle for what she sees, and people could disagree with, as a fundamental right for women. Yeah. And she just sees blokes wanting to get into women's sports teams and toilets and stuff like that. I'm sure she can also empathize with young people who are like, what am I doing? What's going on? This culture's led me this way. I sort of see trans women, I think it is just a guy who wants to be a woman. And what's really sad is if my mate wanted to wear a dress or whatever, like, fill your boots. You know what was sad? I got blocked by this guy. Sorry, I just want to say this fella who I really liked. Do you know this guy on Twitter who does he talks about people's suits? So he's like, I got into suits for a few months. And
possibly.
He does Ben Shapiro, and he often makes fun of them and says this is a better one. It's a better tailored length or blah, blah, blah. I got quite into that. And then he shared a picture of Laurence Fox, who, I don't know, and he said, look at Laurence, he's wearing all this feminine stuff. Like the jeans are very feminine, this very feminine. And you see, you're trying to be, and I thought it was such a fundamental misunderstanding of the gender critical side. Yeah. Because Laurence Fox is a bit of a lovey, he is a bit of a lesbian. Yes. And of course, his whole point, or JK's point would be, if you wear what you like.
But it doesn't make, you can wear a dress, but it doesn't make you a woman.
Yeah. So I just think for JK, and especially because the Australian equivalent of that Supreme Court decision, they came down on the other side. They ruled that a man is whatever they say it is, and a woman is whatever you say it is, which led to a friend of mine who has an app, a woman's only app for women who talk, I don't know, they talk about periods or something. I don't know. She got into a whole thing with a guy called Roxy Tickle, which is a porn star name, effectively, that he's given himself as a woman. And he took her to court because she didn't want him in the app, and he won. And now he's getting more and more damages, and Australia has decided a man as well, which to me seems like a human rights utter travesty.
Well, I think that will probably swing back the other way because of examples, like that.
I think
I think that there are Well, culturally, we've got to a point where, you know, I mean, growing up is fucking hard, right? You know, even if you're sort of popular at school or not, your identity isn't formed yet, right? So of course you're going to play and dabble, and in a way, it's almost like as long as you've got a difference, you can be part of the tribe. You know, so as long as you've got something
emo, it was emo back in the day. Wasn't it?
the
goths.
So, you know, and there is obviously gender dysmorphia being a thing, but I do think there is what sorry,
is it dysphoria or dysmorphia? Because they both sound right. But go on.
Either way, the one that's right is the one I meant. All right, but there are obviously plenty of examples of sort of it being a fetish rather than a gender issue. So you know, a 50-year-old guy suddenly deciding to put on a dress because it makes him feel kind of sexy.
Which I think you and I would agree, fine.
Oh, fill your fucking boots. But there probably should be some safeguarding with where you can go for a piss or what sports you're allowed to.
He said it.
He said it. Damn. That is me done now, isn't it?
There's another side to this, which is they are known as the GC ultras, the gender critical ultras, and I wouldn't count J.K. Rowling among them. But when I've been at sort of events where it's sort of a gender critical thing, and it's very much a feminist sort of like grassroots feminist. That's how it feels anyway.
Yeah.
Often there are trans people there, and there are, joining in and having a good time, or people who dress with women's clothes and things like that. And the GC ultras have picked up on that and gone bananas, because they feel like you're in our tribe, you're supposed to be this sort of gender critical thing, and you're letting people in who dress as women. But that's what being liberal is about. I don't care. I wouldn't. Maybe I would. Maybe.
I think again, it's one of those things that it's one of those discussions that really does deserve nuance. Even if you are of the opinion, you go, well, a trans woman clearly isn't a woman, full stop. And you could definitely argue that statement is true, but you could argue that it's not. And it really annoys me when people go, there isn't a gender debate. There is no debate to be had. I'm right. You go, well, there clearly is a debate taking place.
I'm not sure there is.
Really?
Well, no, any more than, black is white.
Yeah.
And you can say, okay, we can debate that. And some philosophy students probably do debate that, don't they?
For
black is white.
4 years.
Yeah. So in that sense, of course, everything is a debate.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any debate over, and that's why so many of us sort of stuck to it, because it was like, this is such a great example of postmodernist overreach. This is the number one. Yeah. What is a woman? This man says he's a woman. Okay, tell me what a woman is. I've never heard an answer.
I mean, the idea that for the last sort of 2 or 3 election cycles, that's the way to stump an MP. Ask them that question.
Because that's how you know if they're
is a woman.
That's how you know if they're honest.
Yeah. And I think most politicians just breathe a huge sigh of relief when that High Court thing is. You go, it's not in our hands. The High Court have said that, so I can now tell you what a woman is because the High Courts have clarified that for me. Because I was amazed at how. And even if it is a difficult question, which it shouldn't be, but if it is a difficult question for an MP or a politician to answer, rehearse your fucking answer.
I know they're shocked
because literally, just like that, you must know that is coming. What is the party line on this? Anyway,
that's so funny. Yeah, I didn't think about that. They're always like caught in the headlights.
Just go, oh God, what am I supposed to say? It was like you could have rehearsed this one.
Ben from the thick of it, Blinky.
Yeah.
I've got one more question for you, but where can people find your work?
Oh wow, okay, thank you. Well, I've got a YouTube channel, Facebook channel, Twitter, all of that, and my 2 series of Call Jonathan Pye is available on BBC Sounds. For some reason, I get an inkling that your listenership will listen to that and go, fucking BBC. So you can, wherever you get your podcasts, but it was a BBC commission. But like I say, I can honestly say they were the least censorious people I've ever worked with.
Which is good to hear.
Which was amazing. And yeah, that's where you can find my shit.
We'll have the links below. Who is a heretic you admire?
love the devil.
Brilliant. And you look like the devil laughing. That's how he would laugh.
Yeah.
You've got a bit of a Gary Oldman look, actually. Has anyone ever told you that?
Really?
When you laughed hysterically like that, in that what was the film?
Yeah, when he...
that's it.
Yeah. Well, I'll take that.
Leon.
Thank you. Leon, yeah.
Yeah. Devil? You can go with the devil.
Yeah.
I need a couple of sentences.
There's a... What is it? Alan Partridge describes it. I hate the devil. He's an evil idiot.
Is it evil? Can you do the voice? Or were you doing that?
What sort of? When I went to the same drama school as Steve Coogan, and we were all obviously he's a lot older, but I spent 3 years, all of us, just trying to out Alan each other, and it's really weird when I'm playing Pie, particularly in the radio show, because he is a cool show host. So he's got the exact same job as Partridge. It's so difficult to. I've got people just going, the minute I go Partridge. But like Pie can't say a brand name because it just,
yes.
The Vauxhall Vectra, and it's suddenly he's Partridge.
I'm writing a kind of memoir-y kind of like about how I got into YouTube and how at the BBC and how it all happened kind of thing. And every line I write is accidentally Partridge.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I can't.
It's so difficult.
Yeah. And you can't be bitter about anyone. Everything's Partridge.
Yeah. I had the last laugh.
I had the last laugh. Anyway, that people please go and Jonathan Pye will put the YouTube channel. Call Jonathan Pye on any podcast place you can get at the platform. It is actually really good, really funny, and he's been brilliant. So please go and check that out. Hit the like button. Keep watching this channel.